So we have UDL 3.0, um, which I think kind of ties into my next question, but I'm curious also for additional insights about what inspired you to write your upcoming book, UDL at Scale, at this particular time.
It's the right time for it. The
Yeah.
higher education sector worldwide has kind of lagged behind K-12 institutions in
Hmm.
exposure to UDL, adoption at an individual practitioner level, and especially in adoption of universal design for learning at organizational scale. So when Reach Everyone, Teach Everyone was published in 2018, the strategic implementation sections of that book, they were based largely on historical examples of general change advocacy in other higher education scenarios. John Tagg outlines this in his book called The Instruction Myth, 2019. Now, today, the first wave of higher ed UDL implementations at scale is a reality. There's various colleges, schools, and universities adopting what they define as UDL across entire departments, schools, or institutions.
Mm.
So, for instance, there's a 2022 book, The UDL University, that
Okay.
has stories from various areas of Goodwin University. They began the process of becoming a UDL university in 2016, but even that book is mostly narratives. It provides few blueprint level ideas or practices that other people
Mm.
could follow. Rather, most chapters in that book, they are theoretical exhortations or examples of what I did in my individual situation. And that's been the pattern among books ostensibly about scaling up UDL. For example, there's a book, UDL Moving from Exploration to Integration. And that's a collection of what we accomplished case narratives from K-12 practitioners. But it's also not a set of instructions that you could do as a president or a provost or a school board member or a board of trustees person, right? Most of today's reports about institution and system level UDL efforts are based on local circumstances, available resources, ad hoc measurements of effectiveness and success. As I was doing the research for my book, I've got examples from Australia, Canada, South Africa, the United Kingdom, Ireland, the United States. There are a number of UDL scale up webinars, seminars, professional development offerings from individual practitioners. I'm thinking especially of our Canadian colleague, Frederick Fauvet,
Mm.
most of which are framed as potential models and explorations of what might work for various institutional types. So collectively, this evidence showed that the conversation around scaling up inclusive design frameworks is evolving among our higher education leaders. They tend to recognize the term UDL now.
Mhm.
They hold a simple understanding of what it is and how it works, and they want to be trendy in applying the buzzwords of the moment. There's more in my book about how we can actually leverage that. But they don't yet perceive universal design for learning as a mission critical core business imperative. So that's why I wrote the
Mm.
book. I want to give people a how to do it, a why to do it, and how to talk to your boss about it.
Which leads us just wonderfully. Can you talk about some of those ideas or strategies that readers can look forward to in the UDL at scale?
Oh, yeah. Awesome. Readers, you can't see me, but I'm actually reaching over on my desk and I'm pulling out an index card that has a post-it note attached to it, that has a smaller post-it note attached to it. And this is the thing that I wrote down 2 years ago after my morning run. I got home and I had the idea of the framework that I wanted to use in the book already in my head and nowhere to write it down. So
Hmm.
you can imagine I'm after, a 2 mile run, hot, sweaty and whatnot. And I grabbed the first piece of paper that I could find and a pen. And it's a five-part strategy. So first we have to make universal design for learning possible. In other words, we have to
Yep.
have at our institutions at least a baseline of accessible practices. Maybe we're not going to do universally designed learning experiences quite yet, but are we collectively creating material that meets standards for accessibility? Are we collectively putting captions on our videos? Making text transcripts for audio podcasts that we create? Are we making alternatives and options and formats there? So from possible, we go to permitted. And permitted is, can people do the work of universal design for learning? And is it part of our policy manual? Is it one of our goals? Is it something that the institution formally supports? Then we move to supported. Does the institution actually put resources in people's way so that they can and perhaps must do some things that are universally designed? And when we talk about supporting, that's actually a really big shift in how we ordinarily do campus level change.
Hmm.
Rich, you have, and listeners, I imagine you have as well, received the email that says you must do this mandatory cybersecurity training or you risk not
Hmm.
getting a raise or a promotion next year.
Yep.
And you have to do it by December 31st. That is a compliance mindset. You must.
Hmm.
And with universal design for learning, because it can take so many different forms, saying you must actually doesn't move the needle very much. But if campus leaders say, we are all going to be a more inclusive, accessible institution, and here's our goal, here's what we want to get to, and we're going to support you to get to that so that everybody crosses that finish line together. Tell us what you need. That's exactly the same behavior, and it's framed differently. It's framed as this is a benefit, this is something we'll support you to do.
Hmm.
We go from possible to permitted to supported to rewarded. And here's
Mm.
where everybody thinks, oh, yeah, we need more money and we don't have a lot of money, right? So we can't get funds for this.
Hmm.
The rewarded part, there are many meaningful kinds of rewards. So, for example, if you're one of your part-time instructors online decides to do some UDL implementations in the assessment of learner activities or in a discussion forum, and that's new to them, then have a meaningful reward that says, hey, you did this in this term. That means that next term you go to the front of the line for choosing which courses you'll teach. That
Mm.
costs us no money. It's something that a faculty union would love, or if you're not a unionized campus, your faculty senate would love. And it's also something that a an administrative team can easily say, oh yeah, we can let people do that and move them around in the queue for the seniority. And as long as there's agreement on all sides of that, it doesn't have to be money in terms of the reward. It has to be academically meaningful. Does this count toward promotion, tenure, asking somebody to come back and teach again, job security, whatever it is? From possible to permitted to supported to rewarded, the last part of it is expected. This is where we put universal design for learning into the requirements in our job ads. And not just for instructors, but also for the folks in information technology, in the library, in media services, so that when folks on campus come to any of those service touch points and they say, hey, we want to do this, the answer is, we've got your back. We'll help you chop that up into small segments. We'll help you with captions. It's just what we do at our institution. So the hiring process, the making it expected part, that turns things into everyday workflow rather than, oh, this is some extra thing that we're bolting on. And once we get to inclusive design as part of our everyday workflow, that's when we've actually scaled up. And I've got in the book examples of 15 different colleges and universities worldwide who have actually done it.
That's wonderful. So Thomas, you're talking about the rewarding part resonated. So I've done a lot of work as that online part-time
Mm,
instructor.
yeah.
And when I have, managed to just incorporate UDL, I've personally I've appreciated the I'm having so many less questions about this and that. I've saved so much time, which is, I found, rewarding in and of itself, but I love just that at the institutional level of rewarding, that just finding ways that even if there isn't necessarily money to go around,
Mhm.
finding those things of just recognition and
Well,
things like that.
and you're bringing up a good point, is that one of the baseline sort of financial arguments for UDL across all of our service touch points
Yeah.
is that in the classroom you said, hey, I designed this differently and now I
Hmm.
don't get 700 of the same question asking for
Yeah.
clarification on the directions, right?
Hmm.
Or you don't end up having to reteach. Your folks in the IT help desk, they spend a lot of their time just answering the same questions over and over and
Yeah.
over again from students, from instructors, from everybody at the institution. Universally designing their services actually reduces their workload and allows them to be more efficient. We
Hmm.
can put more people on harder tasks or more challenging activities. We can get to the backlog of work that's piling up around people. Those are financial reasons to adopt inclusive designs. Yeah,
Love it.
that's really the beating heart of the book is
Hmm.
I wasn't used to making a business case for UDL.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
in this book, that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm trying to talk to presidents, provosts,
Hmm.
deans, boards of trustees, and make that dollars and cents argument for inclusive design.
Yeah. Bravo on that. Join us for part three as Dr. Tobin clears up some misconceptions about universal design for learning and talks about plus one thinking, a starting point for UDL.